Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. As the incoming U.S. president muses about a takeover of Canada.
Economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
Leaders here push back.
We need the federal government, because it is a federal responsibility to show strong leadership on addressing the border issues.
Plus,
paying attention to the everyday needs of British Columbians.
Federal Liberals project hope in BC amid the search for a new leader and dismal poll numbers.
It's interesting to note that under Justin Trudeau, the Liberals had the biggest showing they've ever had.
And
we have to consult medical professionals. Lots of tests have to be done, and it took a long time.
A self-styled BC childbirth activist is now charged with manslaughter in the death of a newborn.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. As federal Liberals look to replace Justin Trudeau as leader and prime minister, some are looking to BC. As Katie DeRosa reports, the party may struggle to connect with voters, though, even as candidates prepare to step up.
As the search begins for a new federal leader to replace Justin Trudeau, the conversation has turned to the West and how the Liberals might fare in BC.
I think there's still very much hope for the Liberal Party in British Columbia.
The Liberals and Conservatives each hold 14 federal seats in BC, the NDP 13 and the Greens 1. But in the wake of a hotly contested provincial election, which saw the BC NDP barely squeak out a win over the BC Conservatives, and with federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre paying frequent visits to the province, this strategist and longtime Liberal faithful believes the party's hopes hang on strong messaging around fundamental issues like the economy.
Paying attention to the everyday needs of British Columbians and avoiding this sort of very ideological, very polarizing, very toxic kind of politics that we're seeing from Poilievre.
Two prominent BC politicians are said to be preparing leadership bids. Federal Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson and former Premier Christy Clark, who has been learning French in preparation.
It's funny, some people like to call her a right-winger, other people want to call her a left-winger, and usually it means that you're somewhere near the center.
Vikram Bajwa, a longtime federal Liberal, is also planning to run. BC NDP Premier David Eby, meanwhile, weighed in on what it will take for the Liberals to make traction in BC.
I think it's vital for parties that want to be successful in BC that they recognize that BC needs to be treated at least equally to the other provinces in Canada with respect to funding and programs and initiatives.
Hedy Fry has held the Vancouver Centre seat for the Liberals since 1993, making her the longest-serving woman MP. She intends to run again.
Liberals have never, ever been very popular in British Columbia, except in the urban areas. However, it's interesting to note that under Justin Trudeau, the Liberals had the biggest showing they've ever had.
Of the 14 Liberal MPs in BC, 3 have announced they're not running again: Ken Hardy, Carla Quattro, and Joyce Murray. Some MPs in BC could base their decision on who will be leading their party into the next election. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
As more voters react to Justin Trudeau's plan to step down, many are looking at how life has changed after nearly a decade of his leadership. Trudeau has always maintained close personal and political ties to this province. Michelle Gassoub takes a look back at his legacy in BC.
As Justin Trudeau prepares to exit political life, how will BC remember a prime minister with the deep ties to this province? And how has life here changed after 9 years under his leadership? Trudeau's 2018 decision to buy the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which runs about 1,000 kilometers from Edmonton to Burnaby, looms large in BC.
He said, communities will decide, right? And so a lot of people in British Columbia felt that was a message that there wouldn't be, a major oil pipeline built across Canada or expanded across British Columbia if communities didn't support it. And, he backtracked on that.
The reversal on that 2015 promise met with opposition from the BC government and the city of Burnaby, and protest from environmentalists and Indigenous groups. But it's not the only part of Trudeau's climate legacy. His commitment to carbon pricing also earned him criticism.
At the same time, they did more than any other federal government in the history of Canada in terms of trying to deal with climate change.
In Premier David Eby's statement about Trudeau's resignation, he highlighted one area where the two collaborated to change life for BC parents: childcare. And Trudeau's other policies for families have widely been lauded as a success.
His reform of the national child benefit has lifted hundreds of thousands of families out of above the poverty line, and I don't think any party will mess with that. That is a legacy for him which will be secure.
This province and the Prime Minister also partnered up to fight affordability on other fronts, with Trudeau pledging $2 billion to help finance a BC program to build rental homes on public land.
Our government thinks this is exactly the kind of visionary, progressive housing solution that people need.
But in expensive BC, housing prices, along with the cost of just about everything, have led to frustration, even anger at his government.
Like most governments, he has been flummoxed by the economic conditions that emerged after the pandemic, that inflation shock.
From his teaching days and Tofino trips to major policy and pipeline announcements, much of Trudeau's political legacy remains rooted in the West. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
President-elect Donald Trump is taking his rhetoric on Canada much further, suggesting a takeover. As Katie Simpson shows us, it's the furthest Trump's ever pushed this notion of making Canada the 51st state.
Donald Trump is making it crystal clear. He is not joking about Canada becoming the 51st state.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like. And it would also be much better for national security.
While admitting he has no right to do it, he said he'd use economic force to merge the countries, voicing his frustrations over U.S. defense spending and how much it costs to help protect Canada, while also making exaggerated complaints about the trade deficit.
But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down. And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it.
Trump also made multiple threats to upend the Canadian economy, reaffirming his commitment to punishing tariffs on Canadian goods and saying there's no need for Canadian auto exports, dairy products, or lumber.
And we want to get along with everybody, but you know they have to. It takes two to tango.
I think a lot of this might be Donald Trump ringing the doorbell of our northern neighbors and letting them know that he is back in charge.
But Trump's comments are part of a broader push for U.S. expansionism. In addition to questioning Canadian sovereignty, he called for the Gulf of Mexico to be renamed the Gulf of America. He wants to annex Greenland, the sovereign Danish territory, and take control of the Panama Canal. Trump refusing to rule out using military force to do so.
I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something.
Donald Trump's eldest son was dispatched to Greenland on a fact-finding mission.
Just here as tourists, seeing it, looks like an incredible place. We've been talking about going for a while.
Arriving at the airport hours before his father renewed his threat.
People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
Katie Simpson reporting. Now, Canada's response to this latest threat from Trump is united. As Marina von Stackelberg shows us, politicians of all stripes are making it clear Canada will not surrender its sovereignty.
The already frosty relationship between Canada and the U.S. getting even colder after Donald Trump doubled down on his threat to take over Canada.
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
The day after Justin Trudeau announced he would step down, he used social media to fire back, writing, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre posted, "Canada will never be the 51st state, period. We are a great and independent country."
The Premier of Ontario.
Ontario's Premier made Canada's case directly to Americans on Fox News.
What's your problem with the United States absorbing Canada?
Well, first of all, Jesse, you know, I love the U.S., I love Americans, and I get it. You know, President-elect Trump is a real estate tycoon. He's made billions, but that property's not for sale.
A different tactic from the federal Liberal Party, Humour, posting this clarifying map, which appeared to elicit this response from the president-elect. Canadians trying to make sense of it all.
Do you think he's serious?
I think he's very serious.
He says all kind of weird things, so I think it's just better to relax a bit and start negotiating when it's time.
What would you say to him?
Yikes, that's scary. I'm not sure what economic force he would use.
To me, what he's saying is economically, Canada would be not able to survive without the U.S., and he wants us to react to that.
Indeed, former diplomats say this could be a negotiating tactic.
And the bottom line is determine what it is the president-elect is actually trying to accomplish, because it's not clear.
With this latest threat from Trump, Canada's premiers and the Prime Minister have now set a date. They will meet here in person next week. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Police in New Westminster are piecing together a threat that led to the closure of the city's courthouse and a college campus, but they're not saying yet what exactly happened. The buildings are now open, and hundreds of people were asked to leave the area in the morning after police say a threat was made at the courthouse. Police officers set up a perimeter around it and closed several roads. Douglas College says all in-person classes and activities scheduled before 3 p.m. were canceled. Well, it's not shorts and t-shirt weather, but winter in some areas of BC is turning out to be warm so far. And as Tom Popock reports, those temperatures aren't forecast to change for now.
Surveying his soaked fields,
it's all changed.
Potato farmer Bill Zlimans is wondering what happened to the winter predictions.
Well, yeah, we were all of the same opinion that we were going to have a real cold, snowy, whatever winter, which hasn't happened.
He's not alone.
December saw temperatures that were 1.7 to 2.6 degrees above seasonal.
That's on the south coast, but warmer than usual temperatures stretch through the interior up to the north, with only the Peace region weathering typical blasts of Arctic deep freeze. It's also wet, some coastal communities seeing 20 consecutive days of rainfall, those atmospheric rivers creating floods and landslides, Vancouver recording the most rain since 1999. But that is now changing.
The winter pattern has shifted to being quite a bit drier for the south coast and parts of the southern interior as well.
You can blame
La Niña is the cold water phase of a large climate pattern called the El Niño Southern Oscillation.
Forecasters thought the ocean and climate pattern would form this winter, but it's fizzling out, making long-range forecasts difficult. Drier conditions and relatively warmer temperatures are expected.
I mean, winter is certainly not canceled yet, and we still have a ways to go, and there are hints of seeing some certainly seasonal, if not even sub-seasonal conditions.
Especially at elevations, mountain passes could still rapidly turn treacherous for drivers. And it should still be cold enough on the ski hills to make snow, even if it doesn't rain. For farmers like Bill Zlimans, it's all about adapting.
In agriculture, we take what we get dealt, and we adjust accordingly.
Every season now is a bit of a surprise. Tom Popock, CBC News, Kelowna.
Stephanie Hungerford joins us for a look at the weather. And as we heard from Tom, not blisteringly cold.
No, it's not. Very mild temperatures, actually. Especially for the south coast, we're seeing, some highs around 8 to 10, especially on the island. Tonight, we will be seeing a little bit of drizzle on the island, lower mainland, some snow in Whistler, a little bit in Kelowna, but then that all should stop tomorrow. And then we're going to see a little bit of clearer skies, sun and cloud throughout the lower mainland tomorrow. And then for the weekend, we'll definitely see a little bit of rain.
Simple enough. Thanks, Stephanie. She calls herself a childbirth activist, but a BC woman is now charged after a newborn died on Vancouver Island. That story next. A BC woman who styled herself as a childbirth activist has now been charged with manslaughter in relation to the death of a newborn last January. That charge comes after CBC News revealed Gloria LeMay was under police investigation. We spoke with our reporter Jason Proctor earlier. Jason, how significant is this charge?
Well, Dan, this is huge. As you say, we were the first to report of the existence of this investigation by police into the death of a newborn exactly 1 year ago from yesterday, when this child was removed from life support 10 days after she was born in a home birth that police now claim was presided over by Gloria LeMay. And they claim that her involvement in that birth led to the child's death. And they've charged Gloria LeMay, who is a longtime figure in the midwifery community, with manslaughter. Now, RCMP spoke about this case this afternoon. They talked about how long this has taken to bring these charges to the public.
It's a very complex investigation. Ones like these have a long investigative strategies put into play, lots of interviews. We are not medical professionals as the RCMP. We have to consult medical professionals. Lots of tests have to be done, and it took a long time.
Jason, this is not the first time, though, that Gloria LeMay has faced charges dealing with a home birthing death, is it?
No, as I say, she's been part of the midwifery community for 40 years, going back to 1985 when she was charged with criminal negligence causing the death of a fetus. Now, in that case, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. She was actually found guilty in a lower court and acquitted at that top court level because they found that a fetus is not a human being at that point. She was later found in contempt of court after the ignoring orders from the College of Midwives to prevent her from acting as a midwife. She spent 2 months in prison, actually, in 2002 because of this. And so, none of these latest charges have been proven, obviously.
Jason Proctor, thanks very much. A BC winery has now been fined nearly $120,000 and permanently banned from the temporary foreign worker program. Brady Strachan explains why.
In an almost unprecedented move, the federal government has banned an Oliver winery from hiring migrant workers. Desert Hills Estate Winery is located on the Black Sage Bench in the South Okanagan. Like many agriculture businesses, it relies on temporary foreign workers. The winery was founded by Randir Tour and his family. Tour Vineyards operates at the same address as the winery, and now it's facing heavy penalties for allegations it mistreated migrant workers. The penalties are detailed on the federal government's Immigration and Citizen website, which lists companies found to have violated their responsibilities under the temporary foreign worker program. Last month, Tour Vineyards was handed a $118,000 penalty and a permanent ban from hiring migrant workers. While the details of the infractions have not been made public, the government says the company didn't provide the promised pay and working conditions to its foreign workers and failed to provide a workplace free of physical, sexual, psychological, or financial abuse. In 2023, Desert Hills Winery was fined $16,000 for similar violations, and the year prior, then-President Randir Tour pleaded guilty to 7 immigration fraud charges. Naveed Bayat is a lawyer with the Migrant Workers Center.
This permanent ban is rarely used, and the significance is quite because it's so rare. I'm hopeful that we are hopeful that this will send a message and put other employers on notice that people that are brought to Canada or invited to Canada to come work deserve respect and integrity.
Of the nearly 1,000 infractions listed on the government's website, Tour Vineyards is only one of 2 companies listed as being permanently banned from the temporary foreign worker program. Now, CBC News reached out to the company and Tour for comment, but we've not heard back from them. Meanwhile, the company has taken its Facebook page down and is listed on a travel website as being permanently closed. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
There's a look at the day that was on Mount Revelstoke. Your BC-wide weather forecast is coming up next. Back to our top stories now. The Liberal Party is scrambling to find its next leader after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his resignation. But that's just one of several challenges lying ahead. The CBC's Ashley Burke has more from Ottawa.
Justin Trudeau's back at work, but not for long. The Liberal Party's figuring out how to replace him. And now some senior Liberals are deciding if they'll run in that leadership race.
I'm seriously considering that. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about that today.
But the question is, can a new face drag the party out of a deep hole?
By Trudeau resigning, he's given them the rope and a chance to pull themselves out of that hole.
Dan Arnold, Trudeau's former pollster, says over the past 18 months, the party's faced a steady decline in the polls, and so far nothing's changed that. But a new leader could create buzz.
It is true that a leadership change will cause voters to take a second look at the Liberal Party, but it's not a guarantee this is going to turn things around for the Liberals. It's not a magic potion.
He points to the U.S., where Kamala Harris enjoyed a surge in momentum when she replaced Joe Biden, but faced a bruising defeat. And it's happened throughout Canadian history, too.
John Turner came in replacing another Trudeau Prime Minister. Surge of excitement, didn't end very well for him. Kim Campbell came in replacing a very unpopular Prime Minister. Surge of excitement, ended horribly for her with 2 seats.
Whoever replaces Trudeau could be the shortest serving Prime Minister in history if they don't win a general election this year.
At this stage, we're not seeing anybody who is so popular or so well known that they would immediately reverse the fortunes and really put some turbocharge into the Liberal Party's prospects. But at least some of them certainly have the potential to lift the party back up.
Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney says he's considering running, and other cabinet colleagues like former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is making calls too.
Any current sitting cabinet minister who decides to run for leadership will have to work out how they communicate to Liberals and to the Canadian public how they are different from the Prime Minister who's just stepped away.
The Liberals' National Board is meeting this week to figure out how this leadership race will unfold. Once the rules come out, we'll start to see exactly who is joining this race. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Opposition parties, meanwhile, are rethinking their strategies now that Justin Trudeau has announced he is leaving. As Kate McKenna reports, the Conservatives are shifting their attack from the Liberal leader to his party.
He's been Prime Minister for 9 years.
Until now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has had one main target.
Justin Trudeau, who egomaniacally holds on to power. Justin Trudeau is a weak leader who has lost control of spending. Justin Trudeau is finally leaving.
With Trudeau's resignation, the Conservatives will face another Liberal leader in this year's election.
Nothing has really changed in terms of what the Liberal Party will be offering Canadians.
Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer says his party's ready to take on any Liberal.
Canadians didn't get tired of looking at Justin Trudeau's face. It's not like they got sick of his voice. They're suffering under his policies.
About a dozen Liberals are rumored to be interested in the leadership. A Conservative source says they'll look to highlight the closeness between Trudeau and the leadership contenders, like what he said about former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland yesterday.
Chrystia has been by my side for close to 10 years now.
Poilievre has already started branding potential leadership candidates as just like Justin.
I think, quite frankly, the Conservatives don't really care who the Liberal leader is. Virtually all of them have been an enabler of Justin Trudeau and his agenda over the past 9 years.
And with Parliament suspended until March 24th, expect Poilievre to be back on the road, meeting voters months ahead of an election.
I asked my assistant today how many events we had done over the last year, and he said it was exactly 600.
It's a great opportunity to get out, meet voters, communicate that message, and really crisscross the country, courtesy of the government's prorogation.
Conservatives have consistently pulled well ahead of the Liberals and other parties. They're eager to help trigger an election as quickly as possible. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Back to issues south of the border, Donald Trump's escalating rhetoric against Canada has some wondering whether his words are more than negotiating tactics. Ellen Morrow has that story.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
Not since the War of 1812 has a U.S. leader seemed so keen on taking over Canada.
You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
It all started after this smiley Mar-a-Lago photo op with Justin Trudeau. They're trying to get Donald Trump to back off his tariff threat. Just days later came this post from the president-elect, Trump looking out at an AI-generated image of what appeared to be a Swiss mountain range with the caption, "Oh, Canada." Then a Trump taunt, calling Trudeau governor of the great state of Canada.
When you were there, Donald Trump said, quite frankly, Canada should become the 51st state.
Liberal leaders tried to downplay it.
That was an offhand jocular moment. I don't think it was serious.
But Trump kept going, posting many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. I think it's a great idea.
I have opinions, very vulgar and angry opinions about that.
I don't think he's quite there. We're never going to give up our sovereignty.
Belligerent. He's out of control.
After Justin Trudeau resigned, Trump posted if Canada merged with the U.S., there would be no tariffs, taxes would go down, and they would be totally secure. Then, in a press conference just 2 weeks before starting his second term, Trump blasted Canada, accusing it of taking advantage of its relationship with the U.S.
We're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. Our military is at their disposal. They should be a state.
He's not going to engage the way that a president normally engages. Treaties and borders are only respected when people respect them, and they can all be out the window when the leader of the most powerful country in the world just wants to ignore them.
What Ottawa initially dismissed as a joke, now seemingly less funny. Trudeau writing after Trump's press conference, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Trudeau won't be negotiating with Trump for long. It's unclear who will. Many Canadians still seem able to laugh it all off.
Feels like to me all bark, no bite.
He just likes to be heard.
And Trump's making sure he is heard, posting this map, Canada draped in red, white, and blue, just hours after Trudeau's response.
Canadians should be really worried that the President of the United States doesn't respect Canadian sovereignty, and that we're going to have 4 years of this.
Now, for more on this story, let's turn to Arjun Chaudhry, political scientist and international relations expert with UBC. Thanks for joining us. There is a lot of debate over President-elect Trump's rhetoric, whether Canada ought to take it seriously, and if so, how. Do you think he is serious?
It's very hard to say what Trump means by the language of his threats. There's a couple of points to keep in mind in the history of smaller, weaker countries being incorporated into bigger, more military powerful ones. The first point is that it generally happens either during times of war or under threat of war. The two examples here are, you can think of the USSR taking over the Baltic republics, Latvia, Estonia, and so on in 1939, 1940. And the second is that it very rarely happens as a result of what Trump has been calling economic force or economic threats. It doesn't happen as a result of tariffs. It doesn't happen as a result of blockades. So if we look at history, the occasions on which this has happened have generally been accompanied by war or the threat thereof.
Mm-hmm. What is the end game for him, do you think, right now? We've heard everything from it's a bluff, it's a negotiating tactic. Is it somewhere in the middle or beyond?
Bluff and negotiating tactics are not mutually exclusive. I don't think this is a serious statement. I think that it is in the context of making a fair number of threats. And when you overwhelm somebody with threats, they become more likely to make concessions. That at least seems to be the theory of it. And keep in mind, this is in the context of saying other norm-breaking, outlandish things like taking over Greenland, the Panama Canal and stuff. So this is in the broader context of somebody saying, I am capable of all kinds of things. as a prelude to negotiation.
That being said, there have also been criticisms that people may not, or at least that when it comes to Donald Trump, some believe they may not be dealing with a so-called rational actor, that he thinks so differently outside of international norms that they ought to take these threats seriously, or more seriously.
Well, I think that you have to think about all threats are not created equal. Some are more likely than others. The tariff threat I would take more seriously than incorporating Canada into the U.S., for example. And it's quite obvious why that is. The threat to make Canada the 51st state is just enormously more costly to achieve than imposing a tariff even of 20 to 25%. I would say actually that the outlandishness of the threat to incorporate Canada into the U.S. to make it the 51st state is actually making the threat of a 25% tariff more credible than it was 3 weeks ago, when most commentators were saying that it would be profoundly damaging to the United States.
Arjun Chaudhry with UBC's Political Science Department, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
At 6:38, this is a live look at Pacific Palisades in California near Los Angeles, where a massive wildfire is threatening that community in LA County. The blaze started earlier in the day, quickly grew in size. That entire region has now been ordered out. We will have the latest on this story coming up.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in this city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
Tens of thousands of people are rushing to flee a fast-moving wildfire in the hills just west of LA. Destructive winds whipped up what was this morning just a brush fire. Officials say homes in Pacific Palisades have already been destroyed. Aaron Collins shows us the race to get out before it gets even worse.
Wildfire smoke once again rolling over the hills of Southern California. Of course, the flames are back too. Burning homes, forcing thousands of residents in this affluent LA suburb to get out again, a dance they know all too well.
We have seen that before, so nothing new to us for the last 32 years that I've been here. We have everything in the car, you know, the silverware, the money, the passport, and everything ready to go.
But leaving easier said than done. Residents forced to abandon their cars and flee on foot.
Can I just leave my car right there? Where's your car? The cop saying you have to leave, and I leave my car right there because... So, what happened? There's a lot of fire right there.
Some evacuees separated from loved ones as they rush to get out.
The evacuating is really very difficult, and 3 miles up the hill, they didn't know if they get stuck in traffic or not. So here we are separated, but we're in communication by phone.
Even the president unable to take off. Air Force One grounded in LA by the fires. The flames here driven by winds topping 160 kilometers per hour, a gale strong enough to blow over a semi. And those winds aren't expected to stop blowing anytime soon.
This is like right at my doorstep. So, guys, I love you, but pray. Yeah. I'm praying, but God doesn't stop this wind.
Well, firefighting in this part of the world seemingly never ending these days. There were more than 8,000 wildfires in California in 2024. This fire, the first significant one of 2025, won't be the last. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Stephanie Hungerford is here with us now for our BC-wide weather forecast. Before we get to that, Stephanie, what are you watching for in these wildfires right now?
Well, the winds are supposed to pick up tonight starting at 10 p.m., and that's going to continue until 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So what that means is these gusts are going to get up to about 160 kilometers per hour in that Pacific Palisades region. So that's, Gavin Newsom, the governor, said that they're not out of the woods yet. And then the winds are going to be expected to go all throughout tomorrow until tomorrow evening. So pretty scary. Now let's get on to our own local weather here. We've got a little bit of drizzle tonight that will be on Vancouver Island, the Lower Mainland, also the Fraser Valley, some snow for Whistler. And snow also in Kelowna tonight, but that should ease up tomorrow morning. We've got some freezing rain up in the north coast area and a bit of winds. We've had that for the last couple of days. Then this should clear up a little bit tomorrow. We're going to see a mixture of sun and cloud throughout the province. And then Thursday, another system is going to be coming in. It's going to hit the north coast first, some more snow up there, a little bit more rain in Haida Gwaii area, Port Hardy, the tip of Vancouver Island, and then it'll reach us at about Thursday evening or so. And then tomorrow we can see, a lot of temperate conditions throughout the province. We've got, Kelowna and Kamloops sitting at 1. Whistler, that's supposed to say -4, but the cloud is covering the minus sign. We've got Fort St. John at 3 degrees, where they've had very cold weather over the last little while. So things are, BC's not very cold right now, all things considered. Thursday, the same thing, same for Friday. Really, staying at 9, 10 degrees on the island there and 7 in the Lower Mainland. For the 5-day forecast in Metro Vancouver, we've got a little bit of rain tomorrow. Sun and cloud Thursday, Friday some rain, and we might get some sun on Saturday, but we could also see a chance of showers.
Okay, we'll hedge the bets. Thanks, Stephanie. A strong earthquake has struck Tibet, killing several people. It happened near Mount Everest in a remote area not built to withstand such shocks. As Cameron McIntosh explains, it could take some time to determine the true extent of the damage.
This shows precisely when the earthquake struck. Registering magnitude 7.1, it flattened buildings, killing more than 120 people, injuring many more. Numbers likely to increase as searchers scour for survivors.
Yeah, I felt it, yeah. And everyone in my home and around the neighborhood felt it.
This aid worker in Kathmandu says it's hard to fully evaluate the damage.
If there are other shaking or aftershocks are there might be more damages that can potentially happen.
More than 150 aftershocks have hit already. The epicenter was near a remote and sparsely populated area close to the border with Nepal, about 80 kilometers north of Mount Everest, where the quake was felt at base camp, according to the United States Geological Survey. It destroyed buildings more than 180 kilometers away. Tibet is an autonomous region of China. The Chinese government has sent 1,500 rescue workers. Tibet's exiled leader, the Dalai Lama, issued a statement that he was saddened by the devastating earthquake and loss of life. The area's remoteness making it difficult to assess the full damage in an area simply not built to withstand earthquakes.
So the risk still remains. The structures there are still very vulnerable.
People are very worried about this.
In Canada, the Tibetan and Nepali communities are watching closely. 10 years ago, the area was hit by another massive earthquake. Ashish Mishra lived through it. Is busy now checking in with family.
We're keeping our fingers crossed. We don't want lots of casualties, but I think that's inevitable.
It will likely take days to be certain. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
For days, Elon Musk has been posting online attacks about politicians in the UK and the rest of Europe. Musk, the world's richest man and part of the incoming U.S. administration, is using his social network X to attack leaders across the pond. And as Chris Brown reports, some of them are now fighting back.
Take over, Elon, just take... Not content with having the ear of incoming U.S. President Donald Trump, tech gazillionaire Elon Musk is now on a tear trying to disrupt politics in Europe, especially Britain. In social media posts, Musk has repeatedly smeared Prime Minister Keir Starmer, saying he should be jailed, and wrongly accusing him of being complicit in mass rapes when he was the country's chief prosecutor.
We've seen this playbook many times. Whipping up of intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it.
Musk has inflamed an ugly chapter of recent UK history where thousands of children were sexually exploited by gangs of mostly British Pakistani men. An inquiry in 2022 found fault with local authorities, but not Starmer. The head of that probe says victims want action to fix the system, not distractions.
Certainly been very unhappy about the politicisation of child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse in the way that many people, sometimes in a very uninformed way, have waded into the argument.
This veteran political watcher says the intervention by the world's richest man into British politics is unprecedented.
His goal seems to be to destabilise the British government, but also, I think, to emphasise to Donald Trump that this is not an administration that he wants to be friends with.
And it's not just Britain. France's president claims Musk is interfering in elections, including siding with Germany's far-right party. But for Starmer and other European leaders, firing back at Musk comes with risks. As one of Donald Trump's most influential advisors, offending him could turn the incoming U.S. president against them as well. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Folk music legend Peter Yarrow has died. He was a member of the 1960s trio Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Up the magic dragon, live by the sea. Sing it with us and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu.
Yarrow co-wrote the group's most famous number there, Puff the Magic Dragon. They also had a hit with Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind, which they performed before Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech in Washington. Yarrow continued to fight for civil rights and other causes throughout his life. He also, though, served prison time in 1970 for taking, quote, indecent liberties with a 14-year-old girl. Peter, Paul, and Mary stayed together until Mary Travers died in 2009. Yarrow died after living with bladder cancer. He was 86. A Penticton couple, happily married for more than 50 years, received quite the Yuletide gift. After the break, we take a look at their wedding photos, which they've never seen.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
The CBC concert series Road to the Junos is in Vancouver. The 5-night series kicks off January 26th at the Pearl. Tickets at cbc.ca/Junos. And on February 4th, CBC's Michelle Elliott moderates the alumni UBC webinar Med Talks. Join the conversation to enhance your understanding of compassionate and comprehensive care. Register at alumni.ubc.ca.
A Penticton couple who have been happily married for over 56 years received quite the Christmas gift. After their nuptials back in 1968, the Sharmans could not afford to pay for their wedding photos.
Now, 50 years later, they got to see pictures of their big day for the first time. Take a look.
I got a text from my girlfriend, Sandra Farnett, who is the president of the museum in Enderby. And she said in the text, Margie, have you got your original wedding pictures? And I said, no, Sandy. I said, we were never, ever able to pick them up because we didn't have any money. She says, well, I'm looking at them. And I said, what? So she texted me the pictures, and I texted her back and I said, Sandy, I've never seen these pictures. Where did they come from? The museum in Enderby got an envelope that said Towers Sharman wedding, July 20th, 1968. And Sandy just happened to be volunteering that day. She looks at that pictures and she said, that's Barry and Margie's wedding pictures.
Because she was one of the bridesmaids.
Sandy was one of the bridesmaids. My sister was the maid of honor, and she passed away just last year. So that picture was so emotional to see. And
then she was just beside herself with joy. She was very, very pleased. And we're going to have them framed properly and put them where we can see them, because we haven't seen them for over 56 years. I couldn't believe how in the picture of the whole wedding party that the photographer had us not smile. There wasn't a smile in the group.
None of us were smiling.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. She took a beautiful wedding picture, and I was just so happy with it. She picked me, and 56 years later, and plus, we're still going strong. So I guess she made the right choice.
Oh, they're so cute.
They are. No, that is a veil, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of the era. Amazing.
Yeah.
Good white suits there, boys.
And the bridesmaids with the veils, too.
Just
I mean, that's the 60s,
knife crease.
I guess.
No kidding.
Well, thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. See you then.